Hey everybody, welcome back to round 29 of Inside the Clinch. My name is Eric, and as always, I'm joined by my longtime friend Johnny. We have a lot to get to on this episode. We have Rozenstruik getting his hand raised this past Saturday against Augusto Sakai in a very nice last-second knockout. We also have Floyd Mayweather just fought Logan Paul last night, so we're going to be giving our thoughts on that. But I think the most exciting thing of this episode, John, is we're shortly going to be joined by MMA Junkie's Bohn. He's going to be giving his thoughts on UFC 263 with us. The next pay-per-view event that's coming up this Saturday. We have a doubleheader. It's going to be Davison Figueiredo defending his belt against Brandon Moreno. This is a rematch from last year. And the main event is going to be Israel Adesanya versus Marvin Vetorri, another rematch. But I think the most exciting thing on this card is that we have a non-title fight, non-co-main event, 5-round fight, which is going to be Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards. I can't recall another time we've had a 5-round event that was not a title fight or main event, but we'll get into that a little bit later in the show. How are you doing today, John?
I'm doing good. I'm just still processing how we got kicked off of Instagram. Yeah, so for the audience that follows us on Instagram and relies on us for their MMA news, we got temporarily suspended because I posted a video of a fight last night that was kind of like there were like some copyright issues. So if you guys rely on us for your MMA news, your MMA analysis, all that stuff, it's going to be coming back shortly. And I do apologize for that, but it's coming back very soon.
It's kind of annoying because I've seen so many other pages posting the fights and the highlights and everything, and their accounts seem fine, but I don't know. We got suspended. Hopefully, we'll get the account back within another day or two. But yeah, it's really not that fun.
Yeah, I mean, you called it. I mean, when I was posting the video, you said that maybe you shouldn't post it because of the copyright issues. But I'm like, we do this shit all the time. Like nothing ever happens. Like I think we're gonna be good. And then you fell asleep, and while you were sleeping, I got the message from Instagram saying that we're basically temporarily suspended. And I'm like, fuck. Do I wake up Eric? What is he gonna say? I let you sleep a little bit, and then you woke up by yourself in like a pretty good mood, and I was like, you got to spend. I hope everything is gonna be back to normal soon. I mean, like I didn't really. When I usually post stuff, I usually like to put the tags or like where I get it from, but this video, it just didn't have like the source on it because it was just like so fast right after the knockout. I guess whatever. I made a mistake, but we're gonna be back soon.
So, John, let's get into the past UFC event. There was a ton of nice finishes, some nice fights, but I think the most important fight was the main event. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Biggie Boy, got a first-round KO against Augusto Sakai, and not just a first-round KO, another last-second knockout. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to recognize a pattern in Rozenstruik where he seems to get very, very explosive in the final seconds of the fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of, in my opinion, I feel like that's kind of a coincidence.
Could
What
be.
do you think? You think he just turns it up in the later minutes of the round?
I just feel like he doesn't slow down until he hears the bell, which is part of what makes him such a great fighter. He doesn't slow down until the fight is really over.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a good quality to have in a fighter. I feel like a lot of fighters lack that because like some fighters just stop fighting without the referees stopping them. So I mean that he doesn't have that, but. Look, dude, it's so nice to see Jairzinho Rozenstruik back in the win column. I personally thought he was going to lose. Sakai, I mean, he's a good prospect, but I thought that if the fight remained on the feet that Jairzinho would have his way, and that's exactly what happened. I feel like Sakai should have utilized his grappling a little bit more, adjusting a little bit more, but, Rozenstruik didn't allow him to do that, and the fight went his way.
Yeah, I don't think he attempted any grappling or takedowns at all, if I'm not mistaken. Which, again, we were saying that was going to be his key to success if he did want to get his hand raised.
I mean, he's primarily a striker, but like when you're fighting such a well-accomplished striker like Jairzinho Rozenstruik, I feel like you need to go somewhere out of the striking department to find some advantage, because Jairzinho is just like on a different level when it comes to kickboxing, all that stuff. Not saying that Sakai is bad, but like there's levels to this shit, and Sakai learned that this Saturday.
Yeah, look, Biggie Boy's, like you said, back in the win column. I think another win or two, he may be able to get a shot at the title. I would eventually like to see him run it back with Ciryl Gane. I feel like that was a fight that could have gone differently. It wasn't. I feel like the build up to that fight came out to being more than the hype that was around the fight itself. There wasn't as much action as we expected. There was two big high-level strikers. We expected a little bit more of I guess stand and bang would be not the best word to use it, but that's one way to describe it.
I mean, Cyril Gane has a fight schedule right now with Alexander Volkov, which should be very exciting. Which I think is going to be a very long night for Volkov, but that's besides the point. But taking him out of the picture, there's not that many people in the division he could face. I was actually thinking about, what do you think of him fighting Curtis Blades? Curtis Blades coming off a loss to Derek Lewis, he got knocked out. Very surprising, but what do you think of that potential matchup?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think just stylistically it'd be really exciting. I think it makes a lot of sense as far as their rankings in the division. I feel like the Cyril Gane and a Volkov fight could potentially be a number one contender fight for the belt, but the winner of that fight could potentially be an alternate, or maybe if they win more impressively, they can maybe even skip the winner of Gane and Volkov for the title shot.
Yeah, so I just pulled up the rankings for the heavyweights. So Francis Ngannou is the champion. Stipe is still number one. Derek Lewis, who's coming off a win over Curtis Blades, is at number two. Cyril Gane is at number three. Curtis Blades at number four. Alexander's number five. And Jairzinho Rozenstruik is at number six. So, I mean, I feel like the only people that are left of him is Curtis Blades. Does Derek Lewis have a fight schedule right now?
I don't believe so, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, so I feel like the most realistic and beneficial outcome for Jairzinho Rozenstruik coming off this fight, I feel like would be to fight Curtis Blades. I don't know how that matchup would favor him because, Curtis Blades is very heavy on the wrestling and Jairzinho is primarily a striker. So I'm not really sure how if that would benefit him in any way, that matchup. But I feel like
Curtis's last fight, though.
Yeah, exactly. Like
he was supposed to wrestle, didn't wrestle, and then got knocked the hell out.
Yeah, last fight I was saying, like, I was so confident that Curtis Blades was going to win. He's going to defeat Derek Lewis. But Derek Lewis, dude, it's just at heavyweight, that, like, one-punch knockout power it's all it takes. And that's all it took on Saturday night with this fight.
Yeah, once again, congrats to Biggie Boy for getting back into the win column. Big win. Very excited to see him back. Hopefully we get a quick turnaround.
Yeah, so on heavyweights, we also had Walt Harris taking on Marcin Tybura. And if you watched our last episode, you know how we feel about Walt Harris. Much respect for him. In the beginning second of the first round, he kind of exploded. Like a lot of, like, I was listening to some podcasts and people were saying that he was having a lot of success in the first round. But I feel like that was just Marcin Tybura's game plan, just to weather the storm. Walt Harris is a very powerful striker. So if he lands on you, it's going to be a devastating night for you. But I feel like that was Marcin Tybura's plan in a way. He weathered the storm. He got the job done in the first round. Walt Harris, unfortunately, gets another loss to his resume. But as you said, look, dude, the dude went through a devastating tragedy in his life, but the fighting skills is his fighting skills, and it's just not at the level of most heavyweights. I mean, most top heavyweights in the division.
Yeah, I mean, look, we saw it. We expected it to go the way that it did. Unfortunately, like you said, he is taking another L. I would like to see him fight a step down in competition. He is a fairly big name, and he does have skills. He does need some improvements in certain areas, but I do think if he puts in the time and the effort, I don't think he can be a title contender, but I think he can make it higher up the rankings than he has. Like I said last episode, we're seeing him stumble towards the higher level fighters. When he was fighting the lower ranked fighters, we saw those highlight reel knockouts, and he just looked great as far as his performance goes. So, hopefully he fights a step down in competition. I don't think this is necessarily the end for him, but I don't think he should continue fighting high-level competition just because he has a big name. I think he should get himself together and get himself on the right track.
I agree. A lot of people that I'm listening to are saying that he relies on his power, but I feel like that's all he could really rely on. What does he have aside from his insane power in the division? People are good at grappling. People are good at striking. What is he really good at? He just has insane amount of power, which he tried, and it didn't work. So, I mean, that's all he could do. I don't know.
I'm not sure who his coach is right now, but I think if this is just an idea from me who has no fighting experience, but maybe if he goes to a different striking coach, like maybe someone like Trevor Whitman or, some of those other high-level coaches, maybe it's just a tweak in his game plan. Maybe it's the way he strikes. Maybe it's just strategy. I feel like, Trevor Whitman has transformed fighters, even made fighters that are pretty much already on the top. He's made them even better. So, maybe a change of camp might fix some of the holes in the game and get his striking where it needs to be so he can actually utilize that power.
Yeah, so moving along the main card, so we had Roman Dolidze defeating Liriano Strapoli via decision. We had Santiago Ponzinibbio, who was coming off a loss, defeating Miguel Baeza by decision, which was a very close fight.
That was a war,
And then
man.
that was a war, yeah. And who did you think when the fight was over? Who did you think won the fight?
I was hoping Ponzinibbio just because of how big of a fan I was of his prior to his loss. He was like on a 24 fight winning streak, I believe, or something like that. To be honest, I wouldn't have been upset either way that the scoring would have gone. But I mean, like I said, that was a war. I don't know if it won fight of the night, but definitely should have been at least in the conversation for fight of the night.
It did win fight of the night.
Maybe I was a bit biased because I was a bigger fan of Ponzinibbio, but I was hoping he was going to get his hand raised when the announcements were being made.
Yeah, I mean, after the fight, I actually thought Baeza took it, but looking at the scoring afterwards, the statistics of the fight, it was clear that Santiago Ponzinibbio won, and it's nice to have him back on the win column. Earlier on in the main event, we also had Dusko Todorovic, who had a decision win over Gregory Rodriguez. And to start off the main event, we had Montana De La Rosa defeating Ariana Lipski via TKO in the second round. So it wasn't the most exciting card, but it was good to have the UFC back after 1 week of hiatus.
For sure, yeah. And there were still, like I said, plenty of good fights. Not the biggest names, not the biggest action, but definitely an eventful night nonetheless.
Yeah, and aside from that, on the prelims, we had some exciting fights with Latifi, Bozer, Francisco Ronaldo fought. So it was a fun night, you know. As I said, not the most entertaining UFC cards, but still fun nevertheless.
So, John, let's get into one more fight night before we get joined by Mike Bohn. Like we said, yesterday was Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul. Even though it's already happened, I kind of can't believe that fight went down still. It was a very strange, scenario from start to finish. I must say, to my surprise, Logan Paul stayed in there with the boxing GOAT, Floyd Mayweather. What were your thoughts?
I mean, the first thing that you had to look at when the two fighters entered the ring was just the size difference. You saw how much smaller Mayweather was. And, you know, I know a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, Mayweather is the champion of the world. He's all this, he's that. But you also have to consider that he's 44 years old. You know, I don't care what type of champion you are. Age catches up to all of us. And honestly, I thought Mayweather was going to do a lot better than he did. A lot of his strikes were missing. You know, like the commentators, I feel like were not a little bit. They were very, very biased.
Very biased.
Yeah, but that's boxing. Boxing is rigged. We all know that. But like the commentary was just extremely biased, favoring Mayweather. I thought Logan Paul was doing an incredible job given his experience, given his background in boxing. But did you see the video? There was a video that apparently Mayweather punched Logan Paul and he was on his way down and Mayweather kind of hugged him and prevented him from falling down. Did you see that? And what did you think?
I saw that. So that punch definitely connected and landed hard, but I don't think Logan Paul was going down. I think it stunned him. Yeah, I think he probably would have taken a step forward, and probably would have been slightly off balance, but I don't think he would have fallen if Floyd didn't catch him. I did see that video go viral. I'm surprised it got as much attention as it did. But I mean, look, Mayweather landed a solid hook or was it an uppercut? I can't remember, but Logan looked like he was stunned, and if Logan didn't hug up with him and hold him close to him, Mayweather probably would have hit him one or two more times, and then I think we may have seen Logan Paul go down. But from that clip, I don't think he was going down.
Yeah, from what the video was saying was basically Mayweather was preventing him from falling down because people were speculating and saying that the longer the fight goes on, the more that Mayweather makes in terms of money. So he was not trying to knock out Logan Paul so early in the fight. But that kind of doesn't make sense to me because as the fight progressed, you saw Mayweather getting very frustrated and very angry as he was fighting. So I feel like if he were to stop him from falling, why is he going to get angry later on in the fight? You know what I'm saying?
I don't think I don't think he was held him. And I think if Logan did lean on Mayweather and Mayweather felt like he was out, I feel like Mayweather would just push him off his chest and would have let him fall to the ground himself. But yeah, one thing I want to touch on, one of the biggest things, like you said, was the difference in the physical size. We did see them facing off, the week of the fight, a couple of weeks out, we saw a face off. But I don't think we noticed how big of a difference the size was. I think once we got them in their, shirtless and their gloves and their shorts, you saw a huge difference. I mean, I didn't realize how lean Logan Paul was. You were actually telling me the week of the fight, and I knew he was in good shape, but I guess I didn't realize how much of good shape he was in because, man, Logan Paul looked good. I thought Logan Paul did great. Like I said, he was very surprising that he was able to stay in there for all 8 rounds. He started off strong. But my one, I guess, negative thing from this fight was, and maybe this is something for boxing overall, but I think a little too much hugging. I felt like that was causing a lot of breaks in the action. I
I
get what
mean,
Logan Paul was doing,
that,
but at the same time, I feel like, you're here to fight. You're not here to hug. You can hug it out in the locker room after.
he was hugging for dear life because he knew that if he weren't to hug, then Mayweather is gonna have the advantage on the field. Like he's obviously a better boxer. Let me read you some of the stats. So Logan Paul, he threw 73 jabs, and of those, 7 of them landed. That's 10%. Mayweather threw 14 jabs, and 7 of them landed. That's 50%. And it's just like most of the strikes that Logan Paul threw in the fight, they didn't land. You know, it looked like they
Yeah.
did in some instances, but like they did not land. And as I said earlier, I was kind of surprised that Mayweather was missing so much. But like, I mean, age catches
So
up to all of us. That's just my explanation of the whole thing.
That's actually the second time you brought that up. I think part of the reason that he wasn't able to connect with him was just the size difference. Logan was a lot bigger than any of Mayweather's past opponents, and so that gives Logan the extra mobility to move in and out. He has the extra arm reach to keep a distance, and I think that was something that Mayweather wasn't used to. And although you can try to recreate as much as you can in the gym, once you're actually in the ring, it's a different situation because the fighter has his own style and technique and all that. Oh, one thing I wanted to say before we move on from this, I'm kind of glad that it was Logan Paul in there instead of Jake Paul. The two had, they had some words to say at the end of the fight. There was a lot of respect between Logan Paul and Mayweather, which I always love to see good sportsmanship and respect between the fighters. Mayweather had.
Logan Paul was so happy. Like,
Yeah, he was. Hey, man, he just went 8 rounds with the go, and nobody expected him to do that. You know what I mean? So whether he won or lost, he just had a huge thing to cross off his bucket list. Something that very few people can say that they did. So yeah, just a lot of nice words of respect. Mayweather said that he actually said that Logan was much better than he thought he was. He said he's a promising prospect in boxing, and just gave a lot of respect. And Logan Paul shared some great words back. And I know for a fact that if Jake Paul was in there instead of Logan Paul, no matter what the outcome of the fight was, Jake Paul would have just been talking more shit and stirring up more drama. Which is great to see leading up to a fight, but after a fight, you always want to just see everything in on good terms and see the guys walk away with respect to one another.
yeah, Floyd Money Mayweather was extremely humble after the fight. I feel like he realized that he's not really the same fighter anymore. This might be the first instance where he realizes that he's not Floyd Money Mayweather anymore. He said after the fight that he's not 21 years old anymore. But yeah, the sportsmanship is awesome. Jake Paul, I agree, wouldn't be the same. He was actually in the background screaming that Logan Paul was supposed to win the fight, which is completely ridiculous. For the audience listening, I encourage you guys to go and look at the stats of this fight. If you're convinced that Paul somehow won the fight, that he did not.
Yeah.
I really don't care what your opinion is. Just look at the numbers. He clearly did not win the fight.
Yeah,
But he
Mayweather
did.
landed
He
more
did.
and he landed at a higher percentage. So I think
He
it's
he
pretty
did
evident.
he did a great job, and I don't want to dwell on this topic much longer. We have Mike Bohn coming on soon, but before we get off this topic, I just want to ask you. So we have two celebrities basically that just fought Mayweather. We have Logan Paul and we have Conor McGregor. So we know how the fight went with Conor McGregor. What did you think of Conor McGregor? What did you think of Conor McGregor's performance compared to Logan Paul's? What did you think he did a better job, worse job, equivalent? What's your thoughts on the whole thing?
So one thing I said to you at the beginning of the first round was, "Holy shit, Logan Paul's doing better than Conor already." We saw it was a bit of a weird situation, but in the beginning of but at the end of the first round, we saw Logan Paul kind of like hug Mayweather and start hitting him with like hammer fists over the top of the head. From that point of view, McGregor already wasn't doing that good. I did expect McGregor to do much better only because of how much more advanced of a boxer McGregor was compared to Logan Paul. McGregor did come from a boxing background prior to doing MMA, and I mean, he just he's been fighting throughout his life. But one thing, again, going back to the size difference, I think that was the big factor in this fight. I think if they were closer to the same size, it would have gone completely different. And I don't think Logan Paul would have this performance against someone his size, especially with the experience of someone like Mayweather.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like to give credit to the fact that size makes a huge difference, and we saw in this fight a clear difference in skill That's aside from the commentators being super biased. Logan Paul did a great job, but there was definitely a discrepancy in skill. So honestly, I don't know. I mean, I enjoy these fights. I know a lot of people in the MMA community are like, "Oh, why is this shit happening? Like, why are we getting fights like this?" I mean, I think it's fun, and boxing right now is not really popping, as the kids like to say. So these fights are entertaining, and I'm going to be tuning in every time. So it was a good night of fights, in my opinion.
Yeah, we saw the prelims. They weren't the highest level of boxing, but they were interesting to watch. Another big fight on that card, which I was really excited to watch, was the Luis Arias versus Jared Hurd fight. That was another fight where size was a huge difference, but we saw a smaller guy win. He was outpacing Hurd. He was hitting him with power shots, and I was very surprised to see it. How many times the fighters slipped on the canvas. I didn't realize that this was going to be an open venue. There was apparently rain in Florida when this event was starting, and we saw during that fight the fighters went down, I believe, 2 or 3 times, which was turning out to be an issue. I'm glad they figured that shit out before the main event.
Oh, yeah, Hurt was supposed to win. Apparently, I mean, I don't really follow either of them, either of their career, to be completely honest with you. But RES was just the volume was just the difference in the fight. He just threw so much more. He was controlling the pace of the fight, and I feel like that was the difference.
Yeah, I'm just excited we had a nice night of boxing on Showtime and not on Triller. I'm very, very, very glad it was not on Triller. I actually just realized the Jake Paul fight that's coming up with Woodley is also going to be on Showtime. Again, I'm excited that it's not going to be on Triller because I can't stand Triller and how they run that promotion.
Yeah, definitely. Showtime is definitely a relief coming off from watching Triller so much.
So yeah, great weekend of fights this past weekend, and we are going to be joined momentarily by Mike Bohn to talk about UFC 263 this weekend.
Hello, everybody. Today we have a very special guest that many of you will probably know. He is the senior reporter of MMA Junkie, USA Today, and Rollingstones. He's the one and only Mike Bohn. Before we get into MMA and UFC 263, I just want to thank you so much for coming on our show. We really appreciate it. Eric, as I just mentioned off air, Eric and I are huge fans of yours, and it means a lot to us that you decided to come and talk to us about UFC 263. So thank you so much for that, Mike.
Anytime, guys. Sorry we couldn't make this happen earlier, but I think we picked a good week. Obviously, this is a massive event coming up on Saturday, so I'm pretty excited to chat about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, let's get right into it. To start off UFC 263 on the main card, we have Paul Craig versus Jamal Hill starting it off. I think this is going to be a very interesting grappler versus striker matchup. Jamal Hill's coming in at 8-0, and Craig has won 12 of his 14 wins via submission. So I think this is going to be an amazing traditional, striker versus striker versus grappler matchup. To be honest, I don't see this fight going the distance. I think it's either going to end in a KO or a sub, and potentially winning. I think this whole main card can potentially win fight of the night just because of how stacked it is. But I think we're going to have a banger to start off the main card for this Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's a great fight. I mean, it's a good test for someone like Jamal Hill, who I think a lot of people are touting as maybe one of the future, title contenders, one of these guys who Mick Maynard, who I think the UFC matchmaker has done a great job of restocking this light heavyweight division with like younger talent and interesting guys coming up, and Jamal Hill definitely one of those. And we've seen Paul Craig put in the spot a few times before against these guys. Sometimes he wins, sometimes he loses, but he's proven, regardless of the result, that he's always dangerous in there. I mean, last second submissions, a lot of that kind of stuff. So a guy you don't want to underestimate, but I think if Jamal Hill is going to be that guy that we're all thinking he might be in the future, he definitely needs to get this win here. So a good test for a guy like Hill on the rise. And then Paul Craig, he's a guy who's always hanging around. He's been in the UFC for a bit, but if he wants people to like take him seriously as someone who's an actual, future title threat, or even in that conversation, you got to beat some of these young up and coming guys like this. So I just think all the way around, perfect matchup, great fight to open a pay-per-view main card, and definitely should be a curious one to see play out. But I agree, it's probably not going to see the judges.
Yeah, Jamal Hill is coming into this fight 8-0. I feel like this is going to be a test for both fighters. Mike, I just wanted to ask you, like, do you think that Do you think that Craig's submission, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experience, is going to be enough to take out an experienced striker like Hill?
I think it's definitely possible. I mean, he's a guy that can catch you slipping once and you're done in there. But the thing about Craig is like, well, he's extremely dangerous off his back and everything. I don't know if he has the wrestling technically to really get this fight to the ground, get on top, and be able to really work his game from there. So I don't know. It could be one of those situations where maybe he gets knocked down or Jamal Hill slips or something like that, and then he's able to take advantage on a big moment. But as far as him going out there and being like, hey, you need to get this guy from point A to point B to win with a takedown, I think that's where it's going to get pretty tricky for him. So he's going to have to be able to break through that defense of Hill and get this fight to the ground. I don't think he wants to be standing too long. So there is an avenue to victory for him, but I think the actual process of getting the fight to the mat is going to be what's the most tricky part for Paul Craig. But if he does get it there, all bets are off.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, Paul Craig, once he gets it down, it's pretty much going to be, I think, a done deal for him. But what you mentioned just now, that the UFC is doing a great job restacking this division. You know, we've seen the top of this division is pretty stacked. We have a lot of great athletes, but, you know, the lower rankings, you know, we don't have as much excitement as we've had, I think, in some other divisions in some other years. And Jamal Hill is one of those great up-and-coming stars. I mean, he's fairly new to the UFC, but I've been watching him since the Contender Series. He's very young. It's a promising career. I mean, the guy is amazing knockout power. And, I mean, he's young, so we can only expect to see him to evolve from here. I think I'm going to go with Jamal Hill for this one.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Hill is the pick, but as I said, Paul Craig definitely dangerous, and I think he can win. I just definitely wouldn't bet my money on it.
My opinion on this fight, I feel like Craig is going to take it. I feel like he's more well-rounded. I know Hill is a phenomenal striker, but I feel like the grappling is going to be a difference in this fight, and I feel like Craig is going to take it with that and his experience on top of that. But yeah, let's move on to the bigger names on the card. We have Belal Muhammad, who's coming off a loss to Leon Edwards. Well, not a loss; it was a no contest. It was an eye poke. He's going to be taking on the legend, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion, one of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners of our time, Damian Maia, an older Damian Maia. Mike, what do you think? Do you think Damian Maia still has what it takes to take on? I don't know if you would consider Belal Muhammad a top prospect, but somewhere up there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Damian Maia, we kind of know the story on him. Like, he can go in there, I think, even at, how old is he now? Like 42, 43. So, like, even at 43, and who knows, maybe athletically and everything, he's fallen off a cliff since we've seen him in, what was it, March of 2020. Like, that is a long time for a guy at his age. So there is a little bit of unpredictability in there, but as we've seen, he's been able to extend his style for so many years. I would not be surprised if he was able to control Belal Muhammad for 2 of 3 rounds or something like that and win a 29-28 decision, or even get it to the ground and finish the fight with a submission. But it's a tough one to pick for sure. I mean, I think Belal Muhammad is probably the right pick, just because he seems to be clicking pretty well right now. I mean, I know that Leon Edwards fight was obviously really disappointing for him. He felt he was starting to get going, and it was just unfortunate. I was inside the UFC Apex for that fight, and I can still hear in my head like the screaming of when he got poked in the eye, and that was just so brutal to see and to witness for him. I'm glad he's back, and that didn't have any like serious long-term damage for him or anything like that. But even coming into that fight, he had some good momentum on his side. He was really confident he was going to beat Leon and really take that huge next step forward in the welterweight division. Obviously, you know, Damian Maia is as big of a challenge as it gets in this division, and he's a guy who's really, really tough to look good against, even if you win. So just an interesting matchup all around. I think we kind of know what each guy needs to do. Obviously, if Damian Maia wants to win, probably needs to get this fight to the ground at some point. If Belal Muhammad is going to win, he needs to be keeping it on the feet at range for as much as he possibly can. So I don't really know exactly which way the cookie is going to crumble there, but I think both guys definitely have a decent chance of winning here.
Yeah, in the fight with Belal Muhammad and Leon Edwards, prior to the eye poke, what did you think of Belal Muhammad's performance going on with someone like Leon Edwards?
I thought it was okay. I mean, it wasn't anything special, but he definitely was struggling a little bit with the kicking range in that first round and early in the second too, for those few seconds we had before the eye poke happened. So It's tough to say just because, again, it's around. I think Leon Edwards had been off for so long. He definitely wasn't at like his peak form in that round. I think if the fight was going to keep going the way it was going to keep going, I feel comfortable in saying Leon Edwards probably would have won. But I think Bilal would have had a good account of himself. Who knows? It's impossible to say. If you really believe him, he says he was just starting to get the ball rolling and he was starting to find his footing in that fight. Of course, he had fought just weeks before that as well. So we need to take that into consideration, how maybe that factored into that performance and have the full training camp or anything. So just a lot of complicating factors there. I don't think you can take too much away from that. But I do think if you're Bilal, you could be like, okay, I spent whatever 5 minutes and 30 seconds in the cage with a high level welterweight like Leon Edwards. I'm sure whatever may have come out of that for him, it was probably at least a valuable experience that'll help him against, bigger fighters and bigger names and stuff like that.
Yeah, so Bilal Muhammad is one of those really tough guys in the division. I mean, the guy has shown heart time and time again from all of his fights, pretty much. A lot of his fights go the distance, and he doesn't slow down one bit. He's in it to win it from the first bell to the last. The age is the biggest, concern here. We have a 43-year-old Damian Maia taking on a 32-year-old Bilal Muhammad. But I think Damian Maia's style, I feel like it doesn't deteriorate with age as much as maybe some striking styles do. The grappling, you can kind of still grapple at a high level in your 40s, not the same way like you could with striking. You kind of start to slow down once you get to your late 30s, early 40s. So I think potentially Damian Maia can get this fight to the ground. I think I've seen Bilal Muhammad struggle on the ground. So I think if the fight does go down, it should be a fairly easy time for Damian Maia. But if it stands up, I do see Bilal Muhammad potentially getting a knockout. He is very tough. His pace is there. He has gone the distance plenty of time, so we know his cardio is there. So he will be standing and swinging until the end of the fight. I think I'm going to go with Bilal Muhammad just because of where he is in his career right now. And Damian Maia looks like he's, I don't want to say 1 foot out the door, but he definitely is coming to the tail end of his career. I don't know. I feel like Bilal Muhammad needs this win a lot more than Damian Maia. So I would like to see him get his hand raised.
Yeah, it's definitely Bilal has the brighter future. You'd think obviously more fights ahead, but first of all, I'm glad to see Damian Maia get a fight in front of a crowd on a pay-per-view like this. I would not be surprised at all if this was the last one for him, win or lose. He didn't fight for the entire pandemic. I think he wanted, ideally, this would be happening in Brazil in front of a crowd, but the fact that he's able to do this in front of a full arena, I think it might be a kind of perfect swan song for him, pay-per-view main card against a ranked guy. And Damian Maia, at his age, all the things you said are kind of right there, but he's definitely still a tricky guy. Like I said, he could go out there and get Bilal Muhammad's back against the fence and hold it for five minutes. And, next thing you know, 2 rounds have flown by and not much has happened, but Damian Maia's controlled the action. He wins a close decision, something like that. We've seen it many times before, so I would not count him out. He's got the tricks up his sleeve, but yeah, I think in theory, Bilal Muhammad should win this fight, and he's the one who has a lot more to gain here.
I would have to disagree with you guys. Before losing to Gilbert Burns, Damian Maia was on a 3-fight winning streak. He beat Lyman Good, he beat Anthony Rocco Martin and Ben Askren. His age, he's 43 years old right now, and he's probably deteriorating as most fighters do. But I just don't understand I don't know what Bilal Muhammad, what he would be able to do in terms of Damian Maia trying to get him down to the floor. I feel like his Brazilian jiu-jitsu and his wrestling is just superior to Bilal Muhammad's, and even at his age, I feel like it's going to pose a huge threat. And I just see Damian Maia taking this fight. I mean, all due respect, but Bilal Muhammad, he does have a lot of holes in his game, and I think that Maia is going to be able to capitalize.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of a coin toss. I mean, like I said, Damian definitely has a good shot. He can submit anyone or control anyone for a few rounds. So it's going to be very interesting to see that one play out, but I'm glad to see Damian Maia back.
So moving on to the next fight on the card, we have Bilal Muhammad's former opponent. We have Leon Edwards, and like we mentioned, that highly anticipated fight had a very anticlimactic ending, unfortunately. Leon Edwards is one of those fighters who has a hard time getting fights. A lot of people kind of seem to duck and shy away from fighting him just because of how good his skills are and how, I guess, unpopular his name is. Usually when people want to fight guys that skilled, they're hoping it to be someone like Conor McGregor, a big name that they can cash out on and make some money on. But Leon Edwards, unfortunately, has had some trouble getting his name out there. But he's taking on Nate Diaz, the OG of the fight game pretty much. We're glad to see him back. He's another one that hasn't been very active. I guess it's going to be fairly interesting to see where these two are. Nate Diaz is coming back, and he never takes an easy fight. He's come out and said multiple times he only wants to fight winners. He just had a crazy fight with Masvidal about a year and a half ago. He's now taking on Leon Edwards, so he's fighting the best of the division. In my opinion, I feel like Leon Edwards' striking might be a little bit too much for Nate Diaz to handle. We've seen Nate Diaz take a beating in the first half of a lot of his fights. He tends to turn on in the later half of the round when his opponents, tend to slow down a little bit and gas out. So if he can take the fight to the ground, I definitely think he'll be a lot more comfortable. But I feel like Leon has all the tools in his striking arsenal to potentially end the fight before the end of the fifth.
Yeah, I definitely think Leon is the way to go here. I mean, he's been looking really good, even from the little fight time we've seen him over the past couple of years. But I know this is a guy who's been working nonstop behind the scenes and continue to train despite all the madness he's had to endure in his career and fight cancellations. And we don't need to go through the litany of bad luck this guy's had over the past couple of years. But I think for him, like also the physicality, we've seen Nate Diaz at welterweight when he's fighting real welterweight. It's not when he's fighting, Conor McGregor, who's a blown up lightweight, or Masvidal, who you could argue is not a true welterweight given his lightweight background. Like when he was fighting those guys who are really made for 170, I know it's going back years at this point, but like I'll never forget the image of Rory McDonald just suplexing him all over the octagon and stuff like that. And I think if you're Leon Edwards, you definitely, of course, need to be aware of grappling situations with Nate Diaz, but when was the last time we saw Nate Diaz submit anyone? And I think it's going back to the first Conor McGregor fight. So for him, I think if Leon can be really physical in those clinch situations, neutralize him with the grappling and everything, it's going to be a tough night for Nate. And I think we might just see him having that difficulty getting out of first gear there. With his, offense overall. So I think, Leon's really good at shutting guys down. I don't know if he's going to get the stoppage. We'll see. That would obviously be fantastic for him and his brand and everything like that to really be able to put an exclamation mark on Nate Diaz. But yeah, if you're Nate, I think the reason he took this fight is probably the upside of it. If he can go in there and overcome the odds a little bit, beat Leon Edwards, all the doors open up for him, potential title shot against Kamaru Usman, all these different things that could come his way. So I think he's kind of managing risk reward in accepting this fight, and it's a good call in that perspective, but he's got an uphill climb in there, man. I think this is a really tough style matchup for him. Credit to him for taking it, and Leon Edwards getting this opportunity to kind of explode his name value and everything. But yeah, a tricky fight for Nate Diaz. I think it's going to be a tough one for him on Saturday.
Yeah, coming off the loss to Jorge Masvidal for the BMF title or whatever, it's kind of hard to imagine Nate Diaz defeating Leon Edwards at his prime. But I'm not sure if, Mike, you ever had the opportunity to ever interview or talk to Nate Diaz. But if you did, what was that opportunity like? How's Nate Diaz in person?
Well, it's funny that you say that. I've been trying to get to him this week, and his team actually just hit me up and asked if I could talk to him in 20 minutes. So I don't know if that needs to short our window here, and I might need a hard out, but
sure, no worries.
Or we can circle back or something. But yeah, we can keep rolling. I mean, obviously, I've done some stuff with Nate a few years ago for Rolling Stone. I followed him around for a day, which was pretty cool, and kind of got to know him a little bit. He's a very interesting character, and he kind of keeps it low key when he wants to, and if he wants to give you a bigger soundbite and all that, he can. So yeah, I think one of the great characters and one of the big stars in our sport.
Yeah, so we'll keep this one going. I think I'm going to go with Leon Edwards for this one. I think you guys agree with that one. So for the sake of time, let's just keep going through the main event. We have two more fights left. We have Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno 2. This is a rematch from 2020. This fight was one of the quickest. It was the quickest turnaround from a UFC champion ever. Deiveson Figueiredo won his belt against Joe Benavidez, and then 2 weeks after took on Brandon Moreno to defend his title, which was the quickest turnaround ever. This fight, I think, surprised a lot of people, myself included. I thought Deiveson Figueiredo would go into this fight and pretty dominantly beat Brandon Moreno. And although he started off very strongly, he seemed to fade a little bit and gas towards the second half of that fight. And we just saw the heart of Brandon Moreno. That guy was in there. That was his, first title opportunity, and he was definitely not going to let that just fly away. We saw 2 hematomas on his forearms just from blocking all those kicks that were getting headed his way. He still wasn't giving up. So I think just a lot of heart in Brandon Moreno was just super exciting. But I think with the full camp, Davidson Figueiredo would probably have a lot more of a easier time. Excuse me, the second time around. I do think the 2 weeks in between the fights did play a factor, not only in the preparation to the fight, but also the weight cut to the fight. We have seen Davidson Figueiredo miss weight his first title shot against Joe Benavidez. So, how much of the 2 weeks was wasted cutting weight and focusing on his weight instead of preparing for the fight that's ahead of him. I think with this rematch with the full camp for both fighters, and it's been over a year off, I feel like we're going to see a lot more high pace of a fight from both fighters.
Yeah, the circumstances are just so much different this time around. I mean, that last one was just chaos. The fact they threw it together, such last minute. They were in desperate need of a main event. Credit to both guys for even taking that scenario on and then going in there and giving us the fight they did. But I don't think it was necessarily an accurate reflection, especially when you're talking about Davidson Figueiredo and everything he had to endure in the night before and almost pulling out of the fight and just all these different elements. So I think he is the better fighter overall. And I think we kind of saw glimpses of that in the first fight. And I think he's just going to be even sharper. And you see him doing his interviews. He says, I'm going to make a statement here. We're going to have a definitive ending to this fight. And I think he's going to go out there and do it. Brandon Moreno, a great fighter, a hell of a chin, insane cardio on that guy. But I think it's a tough matchup for him when Figueiredo's at his best.
I would have to agree with that, but I believe that if Brandon Moreno, if he relies on his takedown, I feel like he could surprise the world. Like in the first fight, he did land 4 takedowns. Figueiredo landed 2 of them. It was I thought the first fight was fairly close. I would have to give it to Figueiredo at the end of the day, but I feel like, I don't know. I like to go with the underdogs. I feel like Brandon Moreno, he could pull off something and surprise the world and defeat Davidson Figueiredo. Like we saw from the first fight that he is beatable. He does have holes in his game. He's not invincible like a lot of people thought he was. So I don't know. I feel like Brandon Moreno does have a decent shot at this one.
I got to say, Brandon Moreno definitely taught me not to count him out of any fights going forward. That last fight, I mean, he just, like I said, he just showed so much heart, and I gained a lot of respect for him just from that performance alone. But for those that I guess missed the first fight, it did end in a draw. Davidson Figueiredo did get a point deducted after a groin strike in the 3rd round. So that fight, he would have won if it wasn't for that point deduction. Again, with a full camp this time around, we can potentially see a completely different fight. I'm very excited for this one. But moving on to the main event of the evening, we have Israel Adesanya making a return back down to middleweight, defending his title against Marvin Vetorri. This is another rematch. These two fought in 2018. Israel Adesanya, he showed what he was able to do standing up. He had some amazing striking in the first 2 rounds of that fight. But then Marvin Vetorri, he started utilizing his grappling in the 3rd round, where he started to take advantage of the fight. In my opinion, it was a good game plan by Marvin Vetorri, but he started to utilize it a little bit too late into the fight. It's going to be interesting to see how these two have evolved over the couple of years that has passed since their first meeting. Israel Adesanya, we've seen just grow to so many new levels from his striking and just everywhere else. Marvin Vetorri, he's been one of those guys in the division making noise. He's a big dominant force. He has that knockout power, and he has some great grappling as well. In my opinion, if Vetorri wants to definitively get the win here, I think he needs to focus on the wrestling from the start of the fight. I think that 3rd round, he left a bitter taste in a lot of people's mouth because a lot of people are saying that Marvin Vetorri won. But I think if he can utilize a similar game plan from the start and make a dominant statement, that would be his best chance to get his hand raised, because I don't see him outstriking Adesanya.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing you want to do is get in a fight where you're standing at range, trading strikes with Israel Adesanya. I mean, that's a very risky game, a recipe for disaster. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward here that if Marvin Vetorri is unable to find grappling success with frequency in this fight, he's not going to get the win. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. Maybe he'll go out there and blow our minds and, catch Izzy with something big or something like that. But if we're looking at the X's and O's of what should be and how someone should win a fight, you would think Marvin Vetorri needs to get this down and get it down time after time. And, take 3 rounds minimum, 4 rounds to be convincing, 5 rounds if he wants to put, the no questions asked exclamation mark on it. So for him, it's all about that. And for Izzy, I think you just fight how you've been fighting. I mean, a lot of people are putting stock into that Jan Blachowicz loss, the takedowns. Did he make a blueprint on how to beat Izzy? We got to put the size into a factor there. It made a lot of difference in that fight. And we're seeing these middleweights. We're not able to get Israel Adesanya down. It's not like he's the first, Jan was the first guy who tried to get him down. You think of like the Derek Brunson fights and things like that. He's really tough to get down when he's fighting guys who are his size, his weight, and all that stuff. So I think for him, he'll have much sharper defense in this fight, and that's what's going to make it all the more difficult for Marvin Vetorri.
Sure. Can I ask you, do you think Marvin Vetorri was as close to beating Adesanya as I guess the media makes it out to be? Because in my opinion, I feel like he didn't really turn it on until the 3rd round, where it wasn't making too much of a difference. But I feel like the Kelvin Gastelum fight was so much closer, I guess, for someone to beat Israel Adesanya. Because that fight was pretty much, it was, punch for punch. It was, whoever got the strongest punch at that point would win,
For sure. That's like the huge difference. Obviously, the damage from Gastelum was much more significant in that fight. So that's what makes the difference. If you want to pick and choose at the MMA scoring criteria and be like, oh, did he have a case for winning? Sure. Then I guess maybe you could say Marvin gave a good effort, but I think obviously Kelvin was the closer fight.
Mike, before we get wrapped up with you, we had Mayweather taking on Logan Paul yesterday. I know it's not really MMA or UFC or anything like that, but it's celebrity boxing. What did you think of the whole event?
It was just a circus. I mean, it was what we expected it to be. And, we could talk for hours about this, I think. But the reality is, I mean, there's a market for this. It's going to continue happening, and good for everyone who made their money.
Yeah, it was a little bit surreal. I still can't believe that happened, even though it's already passed. Really, I guess it was entertaining to watch, but we have Jake Paul coming up, but I like the MMA events a lot more. They're a lot more exciting, a lot more intriguing, a lot more potential, I feel like, in this sport going forward. So I'm looking forward to UFC a lot more than watching the Paul brothers hand select their opponents. So Mike, we know you got to run. We don't want to hold you up. Thank you so much for joining us. It really means a lot to us, and we hope we can stay in touch in the future. Do you have anything you want to say?
I was just going to say, let's absolutely do it again. I appreciate the time. Sorry, I have to cut it short and run out of here. Obviously, you guys know how this game works. Crazy stuff pops up, and I wasn't expecting this to happen when I got on the call. So I'll be back if you want to do something after the show or anytime. I'll happily jump on with you.
Sounds good.
Mike,
appreciate it, Mike. Best of luck.
Thank you so much, man. And take care, brother.
All right. Thanks, guys.